Program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the USA Today. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for the 23rd day of March. Your reader for this hour is Tom Scanlon. Our first article, as always, is from the first page of USA Today, and it's titled, Justices Take Up Mail-in Ballots. Trump and the GOP Seek to Limit Grace Period. The article is by Maureen Grope. Dateline, Washington. Supreme Court will weigh the Republican Party's efforts to limit mail-in voting when it hears a case March 23rd, with broad implications for the upcoming midterms that addresses whether absentee ballots must be received and not just postmarked by Election Day. Voting by mail has decreased since its peak during the COVID-19 pandemic. Yet nearly 30% of voters still cast ballots by mail in the 2024 elections, and many states have grace periods for mailed ballots. President Donald Trump has long railed against mail-in voting, saying it's vulnerable to fraud and baselessly claiming it cost him the 2020 election. Elections can never be honest with mail-in ballots/voting, and everybody, in particular the Democrats, knows this, he wrote on Truth Social in August. Trump signed an executive order last year to overhaul elections, including eliminating grace periods for mailed-in ballots received after Election Day. Some GOP-controlled states have changed their rules in response, and Democratic states have so far successfully challenged Trump's order in litigation working its way through the courts. In different legal challenge involving Mississippi's law, the Trump administration will join the Republican National Committee on March 23rd, that's today, in trying to convince the Supreme Court that the states are prohibited from counting mail ballots received after Election Day. Daniel Thomas, a political scientist at the University of California, Los Angeles, and an expert on how election rules affect outcomes, doubts the absentee ballot case will have much influence on election results. States without grace periods for mail ballots have similar rejection rates for late arriving ballots as states with looser deadlines, he said. And the overall rejection rate for late arriving ballots in the 2020 elections was less than 1%. Still, the case, Watson versus Republican National Committee, could play a role in public perceptions about election security, said Rick Hansen, an elections expert and law professor at UCLA. Watson fits into this broader pattern of lawsuits over vote by mail, Hassan said in a webinar about the case. I think they're meant to please Trump, and they meant to make the election seem fraudulent. The case, however, has an unusual twist in that the law being challenged was passed by a GOP-controlled legislature. It's being defended by Mississippi Attorney General Lynn Finch, a Republican. Reasonable people can disagree with Mississippi's policy choice to require only the absentee ballots be mailed by Election Day, Finch told the Supreme Court in a filing. But federal law authorizes Mississippi to make that choice. During the pandemic, Mississippi amended its election laws to accept absentee ballots postmarked by Election Day, specifying they could be counted if received within 5 business days. 29 states allowed at least some late arrival ballots cast by U.S. service members and Americans living overseas to be counted, according to the National Conference of State Legislatures. 14 states have extended deadlines, as long as 2 weeks in Illinois, for counting all mail ballots that are postmarked by Election Day. Groups representing veterans and retirees joined with Mississippi to defend the grace period. People are being stripped of their voting rights through no fault of their own because of delays in postal service in states that don't count ballots that are received by Election Day, said Mark Elias, a Democratic elections attorney representing Vet Voices and the Alliance for Retired Americans. Because Democrats are more likely than Republicans to vote by mail, Elias said the GOP is trying to kick out of the electorate voters who they would rather not have participate. Conservative groups are backing the Republican National Committee's argument that strict deadlines are needed to prevent foul play. The longer the period over which the election is conducted, the greater the opportunity for and risk of fraud, a number of groups, including Gun Owners of America, wrote in a filing. Documented instances of fraud related to voting by mail are rare, according to the MIT Election and Data and Science Lab. A 2025 report from Brookings Institute estimated there are about 4 cases of fraud for every 10 million mail-in votes. When ballots counted after Election Day affect the outcome of a race, that can raise doubts about their legitimacy, even when there is no fraud, opponents argue. It's hard to blame Americans for those suspicions when some states produce quick results while others take days to even know how many ballots need to be counted, the Republican National Committee told the High Court. The legal argument the RNC and Justice Department are making turns on the definition of when an election has occurred, because federal law sets a specific date for U.S. elections. Mississippi said the election happens when voters choose a candidate. The voters make their choice by casting, marking, and submitting their ballots, state lawyers said in their written argument. So the federal election day statutes require only that the voters cast their ballots by election day. The Republican Party and the Trump administration counter that an election is the day by which valid ballots must be received. Elections have consequences. They all have a definition, Justice Martin said in a filing. From the dawn of America, Election Day has meant the day the ballot box closes, when election officials must be in receipt of all ballots. The federal judge in Mississippi sided with the state, but the New Orleans-based 5th U.S. District Court of Appeals, considered the most conservative appeal court in the country, sided with the GOP. The Supreme Court touched on the question in 2020 when it overturned a judge's order requiring that Wisconsin count late arriving mail-in ballots during the COVID-19 pandemic. In a concurring opinion, Justice Brett Kavanaugh wrote that one reason the judges erred was that he didn't sufficiently appreciate the significance of election deadlines. States that require ballots to be both postmarked and received by Election Day, Kavanaugh said, want to avoid the chaos and suspicion of impropriety that can ensue if thousands of absentee ballots flow in after Election Day, potentially flip the results of an election. Those 2020 comments from a conservative justice whose vote could be key to deciding the case suggest sympathy for the GOP's stated policy concerns. But Kavanaugh was defending a state's rights to require ballots to be received by Election Day, not asserting that all states must do so. Another consideration for the justices, however, are the votes from members of the U.S. military. The justice might be reluctant to block a practice that has benefited service members by trying to vote while they're deployed far from home. Still, the High Court could do what the appeals court did, say that military ballots are different, because Congress has addressed them in separate legislation. Lisa Dixon, executive director of the Center for Election Confidence and a consultant for the Republican National Lawyers Association, called that outcome quite plausible. The court, she said, could certainly treat it as 2 different categories of ballots. Our next article is titled, Expect Above Normal Temps This Spring. Heat dome in the West is expanding, NOAA says. The article is by Doyle Rice. Spring officially arrived March 20th, and new forecasts say it's shaping up to be a warm few months for most Americans. The news comes as much of the western United States has already been enduring a summer preview from a huge record-smashing heat dome that sent tens of millions running for the air conditioner. Meanwhile, drought conditions are forecasted to develop or worsen for many areas in the west and south central plains, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Spring Outlook released March 20th for April through June. According to NOAA's Climate Prediction Center, the outlook favors above normal seasonal temperatures for much of the contiguous United States, with the exception of parts of northern plains, upper Mississippi Valley, Great Lakes, and Northeast. As for precipitation, the outlooks show below normal seasonal precipitation amounts for the Pacific Northwest, much of the Intermountain West and Rockies, as well as areas in central, high, and Great Plains. Meanwhile, above normal precipitation is favored for most of western Alaska and for a region that includes the eastern Great Lakes and the mid-Atlantic parts of the southeast, according to the center. The highest odds for above normal temperatures include potential extreme heat episodes are for the interior west, the central and southern Rockies, the southwest, and the central and southern plains, said Joe Gottschalk, chief of the Operational Prediction Branch at the Climate Prediction Center, in an email to USA Today. The overall flood risk across most of the continental United States for the spring is currently assessed as normal to below normal, NOAA said in a statement. This risk determination was made primarily because of a dry and warm winter, resulted in dry soils over much of the eastern United States, mitigating the threat of rainfall-driven flooding. Additionally, a well below normal snowpack across most of the country will reduce the risk of snowmelt-driven flooding. However, the Red River of the North and the lower Ohio Valley typically experience flooding annually. Therefore, flooding is anticipated in these basins this year as well, NOAA said. We anticipate typical spring flooding this year over portions of the greater Mississippi River Basin, but the risk for widespread significant flooding is low, said Ed Clark, director of NOAA's National Water Center, in a statement. However, it's crucial to remember that heavy rainfall has the potential to lead to major flooding event. AccuWeather said that cold and warm air will trade places multiple times across the Midwest and Northeast in the coming weeks, pattern typical of a spring. The rebound in temperatures is already underway in parts of the Midwest and portions of the Northeast as the edge of a massive record-smashing heat dome in the Southwest expanded. The Western Heat Dome has already broken the record for hottest March day in U.S. history, as temperatures soared into the 90s and even past 100 degrees in some cities, AccuWeather said. So, have we seen the last of winter weather? No, not entirely. In fact, areas near the Great Lakes and part of the Northeast are forecast to see below normal temperatures in the middle of this week, with some areas seeing a short period of low temperatures in the upper teens and low 20s, with lower wind chills and some potential for snow, but certainly not bitter Arctic air like earlier in the year. Having said that, looking ahead past this week, we generally see above normal temperatures for most of the country, and so by that time, mid-April, any major extensive impact of cold area periods are unlikely. So what is a heat dome? A heat dome, like the one baking the West now, is a sprawling area of high pressure, promotes hot and dry conditions for days or weeks at a time. Heat domes are a lot like a balloon, AccuWeather senior meteorologist Alan Ruppert explained. They expand and contract as the day goes by, and when you're inside of it, it can be very warm. Heat domes can also prevent clouds from forming, resulting in abundant sunshine that boosts temperatures potentially toward record levels. As temperatures rise, so does the cooling demand that can increase the strain on the power grid of the entire region. Extended hot and dry spells can also cause drought conditions to develop or worsen, AccuWeather said online. AccuWeather meteorologist Tom Kynes told USA Today in an email that One concern we have about this early season heat wave across the Southern California is it will cause the ground cover to brown up much earlier than usual, which could spell trouble and increase fire danger if there's a Santa Ana event at some point in April or May. As with any heat wave, common dangers are heat stroke, heat exhaustion, and heat cramps, Kind says. Drink plenty of fluids, ideally water, and wear lightweight colored and lightweight clothing. A hat with a visor, or better yet, one with a wide brim to shield the sun from your head, he said. If possible, do your outside work or strenuous activities early in the day or evening when it's not so hot and the sun is less intense. Air conditioning and a pool are two of the best ways to beat the heat. Klein said the heat dome will begin to break down early this week. However, temperatures are likely to remain above the historical average. We'll probably see more this spring, Gottschalk said. Not only do short-term climate predictions and numerical models favor widespread above normal temperatures as forecast, there's strong agreement for this among many models and at higher normal odds, he said. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 16 minutes after the hour. Our next article is titled, When Tragedy Hit, This Grandma Helped Teens Heal. Peggy Winskowski carries on Grandson's Breakfast Club. The article is by Wendy Naugle. At 4 a.m. every Wednesday, Peggy Winskowski wakes up to make breakfast. She reminds her husband Bill to stay in bed, and she gets ready. I don't want to walk out of that bathroom without my face on, she says. I'm going to have my earrings on. I'm going to go out today like every day is a party. Then she starts to cook. 8 to 10 pounds of bacon, 4 dozen eggs, piles of pancakes, sometimes French toast casserole, or monkey bread. At 7:15, a horde of teenagers arrives. They tromp in past the memory garden out front, the sign above the door that declares she's the mayor of the street, and the cherry lemon tree wallpaper inside. High schoolers in every grade from Bishop Dubourg, a Catholic school in southwest St. Louis, fill their plates and settle in. Winskowski and the kids talk about their chemistry tests, a breakup, and who might make the varsity team. Winskowski, age 69, is not their parent. She doesn't grill them with questions or pressure them to try harder. She listens, and the kids listen to each other. Cell phones rarely make an appearance. They finish their meal, scrape their plates, and put them in the sink, and then Grandma Peggy, everyone calls her Grandma Peggy, ushers them out of the house. She'll do the dishes. They've got school. After quick hugs, they're all gone. She served thousands of meals since the Wednesday Breakfast Club started 5 years ago. It was the brainchild of her grandson, Sam. At a diner with friends on their usual late start Wednesday, the food was just okay. My grandmother can cook better than this, he said. Sam was kind, a jokester who sometimes played pranks like switching your locker on you. The next week, he and his crew went to his grandma's house. The food was better. They kept going. That first year was kind of Grandma's dream. Beloved grandson and all his friends gathering around her table each week for his entire freshman year. Then Sam was killed in a hit and run by a drunk driver. He was 15. You should know Grandma Peggy's a good cook. She taught herself while working a couple of restaurant jobs and studying cookbooks. My mom didn't really like to cook, so I think I wanted to be just a little better, she says. Another thing you should know, she's a talker. How are you today? I'm still vertical, not horizontal yet. Why does she put on a full makeup at 4 a.m. before she cooks? If you get dressed and try to take care of yourself a little better, you feel a little better. These are sayings she's learned not by cross-stitching pillows, but from living. You're going to have bad days, but you have to make the best of the days you have. It's almost hard to believe the list of bad days she has had. She and her first husband divorced, leaving her to raise 4 children alone. She juggled multiple jobs to make ends meet. I had to wait tables at night to pay for braces in Catholic school, she said with pride, and not a hint of regret. Over the years, she's had upward of 80 surgeries, she said, including 2 knee replacements, treatment for stage 4 colon cancer, and the insertion of a pacemaker. Her mother died during the pandemic. Winchkowski moved her home from a nursing care facility and cared for her for 4 months so she wouldn't be alone. Winchkowski's second husband, a couple wed when her kids were in high school, has Parkinson's, dementia, and congestive heart failure, and broke his back in July. Despite it all, I'm still here, she said brightly, then adds a zinger. I guess I talk too much for God, and the devil don't want me. Sam's death was devastating. Long before Breakfast Club, he'd come over after school or on weekends to spend a couple of hours with her. Sammy was my buddy, she says. Before his sophomore year, he'd gotten his driver's permit and checked the box to be an organ donor. We were so proud of him, she said. Grief has been heavy, but Winchkowski doesn't complain. The more grief there is, the more love. Without love, there would be no grief, she said. So grief is a good thing. Winchkowski believes her grandson might have known his life would be short. Kept saying, Grandma, I want country music played at my funeral, she recalls. I'd like to be like Sam. Nobody talks about that at 14. At lunch following the funeral, Morgan Wallen was on repeat. Afterward, Winchkowski wasn't sure if their weekly breakfast ritual would continue. Kids all came and said, Grandma, what are we going to do? Not only do we miss Sam, but now we're going to miss the Breakfast Club, she said. I told them I would feed them if they came. Their morning gatherings became a way to heal. With all the grief and loss she goes through, she still finds a way to power through, says Myra Dozier, a classmate of Sam's who graduated in 2025. She shows how friendships and people being around you get you through hard times. Much as she's helped the kids recover from the loss of their friend, they've helped her. When the tree in the front of her house was struck by lightning, kids turned the plot into a memory garden for Sam. In January, Sam's mother, Kimberly, became ill. We thought Sam's mom was sick and depressed because she lost her son, Winchkowski says. It wasn't depression. January 9th, she was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. January 27th, Kimberly died, leaving behind her mother, her twin sister Carrie, and her brothers Ricky and Stephen. I felt like they were their God's children. I was raising them, and God could take them back any time, she says. Must have done a good job, because now he's taking 2 of my angels. After that, one of their dogs died. We could have written a country music song, Winchkowski jokes. The Breakfast Club kids drive her to the hospital and sit with her daughter, and painted her house as part of their community service hours. Sam, she's convinced, is watching. I think Sam put Breakfast Club into place so that when I lost him, I'd have 35 kids who can call me Grandma Peggy, she says. I'm sure he directed this whole thing from above, saying, Grandma, you got the eggs a little too brown today. Be careful next week. Probably dancing around the clouds with his mom right now. Sam would have graduated last May, and some of his classmates have moved on. Winchkowski remembers them all. They signed their names on the lemons on her kitchen wallpaper. My wall of fame, she says. These days, 8 to 12 kids still show up every week, texting her the night before to give her a head count. I'm not as smart as my smartphone, she says. The community has pitched in with donations for the cost of food, but most weeks she pays for it herself. I don't really do anything during the week, she says. This is my fun, and I'll give up all my fun to serve breakfast on a Wednesday. Alumni often reach out to wish Winchkowski a happy birthday or stop by when they're home from the holidays. Recently, she just finished making homemade cereal bars, one of when one of them came from boot camp and surprised her. "Where's the bacon, Grandma?" he asked. She put it on her apron and started cooking. Our next article is titled, "Trump Sent ICE Agents to Help Strained TSA at Airport." The article is by Catherine Palmer. President Donald Trump said immigration and customs enforcement agents will be sent to airports to assist understaffed Transport Security Administration agents. That's starting today amid an ongoing partial government shutdown. The announcement came a day after the president first threatened to deploy the Federal Immigration and Enforcement Agency to address the growing crisis, which was sparked by the ongoing funding fight in Congress and exacerbated by an influx of spring travelers. On Monday, ICE will be going to airports to help our wonderful TSA agents who stayed on the job despite the fact that the radical left Democrats, who are only focused on protecting hardline criminals who have entered our country illegally, are endangering the U.S. by holding back the money was long ago agreed to with signed sealed contracts and all, Trump wrote in a social media post on March 22nd. In comments a day prior, the president said he would also have the ICE agents arrest people who have entered the United States without authorization, especially those coming from Somalia, a country he's repeatedly criticized. It's not clear if the March 23rd deployment will only see ICE agents assisting TSA agents in their prescribed duties, or if their mandate will also include immigration enforcement at airports. Customs and Border Protection agents primarily manage immigration control at airports. Travelers recently have seen longer waiting times at airports across the country, especially at security screenings, because of a shortage of TSA workers. In the past month, about 50,000 TSA airport security employees have been forced to work without pay as a result of the partial government shutdown. The shutdown began after Democrats refused to fund the Department of Homeland Security until the agency, which includes both TSA and ICE, changed its immigration enforcement policies after the violent crackdown in Minnesota. Republicans have rejected offers from Democrats to pass funding only for the non-immigration enforcement parts of DHS, including TSA. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 28 minutes after the hour. That means we turn now to the money section of USA Today. And our first article is titled, "Dine In or DoorDash? More Americans are cooking to save cash." The article is by Jessica Guyan. As a busy single mom of an 8-year-old daughter, Ellen Hornberger loved the convenience of having a restaurant meal deposited on her doorstep till she realized just how much that home delivery was costing her. After downloading a money management app last year, Hornberger took a hard look at her household finances and discovered she was spending about 3/4 of her food budget, $942 a month, on takeout. "I used to do what was easy, even if it was a little more expensive," Hornberger said. No more. She canceled DoorDash and started whipping up dinner at home, saving hundreds of dollars each month. Not only is she cooking more, she said, her daughter is too. "I hated cooking. Now I'm wearing an apron. Who am I?" The 33-year-old sales program manager from Jersey said, But if I am changing my habits, the economy is changing. Dining in, not out, is becoming a more affordable and popular option as high food prices forced Americans to cinch their belts. Sheltering in place during the pandemic turned even culinary novices into home chefs skilled at mincing garlic and cracking eggs. But the moment the world opened up for business again, sourdough starters were abandoned for the joys of eating out again. Now Americans are giving their food processors and salad spinners another whirl. According to a recent YouGov survey, 3/4 of Americans now cook at least a few times per week. Only 2% never cook. An additional 10% cook once a month or less. Research suggests saving money is the top reason why. Never more so now as high prices strain pinched household budgets. Wages are still growing faster than prices on average, but the sour national mood over the high cost of living has persisted even as President Donald Trump touts a stronger economy and a bevy of fixes ahead of the midterm elections in November. Already 1 in 5 shoppers rate their ability to afford everyday expenses as poor or terrible, an increase of 8.5 percentage points over the past 5 years, according to market research firm Kantar. More than half of Americans, that's 53%, have dined out less often in the past 12 months to save money on food, Kantar found. Now analysts fear food will only get more expensive as the Iran war drives up oil and gas prices. When all shocks occur, the effect tends to ripple quickly through household budgets, sharpening consumer focus on everyday costs and often prompting trade-offs in spending, including dining out, travel, entertainment, apparel, and retail. David Marcotte, Senior Vice President of Strategic Advisory at Kantar, told USA Today. Even before this economic crunch, Americans had started to spend more time in the kitchen. More U.S. adults are cooking today than they were 2 decades ago, according to a 2025 National Institutes of Health analysis. That analysis found the percentage of men who cook on average day rose from 36 to 52%, from 69 to 72% for women. Anika Andring, age 33, and her husband cook most of their meals at their Colorado home, from a steak salad on a bed of arugula to an elevated boxed mac and cheese topped with savory meat and roasted vegetables. We don't necessarily skimp on meals, said Andring, who works in human resources. It's always going to be cheaper at home than eating out. Even if it's at $10 a person, that's cheaper than $20 or more per person when we go out. Feasting on home-cooked meals is far more common than ordering takeout or delivery or eating at restaurants, according to Pew Research. Nearly 9 in 10 people eat home-cooked meals at least a few times a week, compared with 17% ordering takeout or delivery and 12% in eating at restaurants that frequently, it found. Fueling the trend are rising restaurant prices and delivery fees that eat into disposable income. Cost of food away from home jumped 3.9% over the last 12 months, while groceries were more modest 2.4%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Planning weekly meals helps some cooks stay on budget, told USA Today, and choosing fresh ingredients helps them eat healthier. Eating at home not only saves money, but leftovers stretch their food dollar further while avoiding hidden costs such as tips, delivery fees, and service charges, they said. On a recent evening, Robert Belpasso, age 31, was simmering homemade bone stock in his New York City apartment. On the menu was a chicken vegetable soup made from a $5 Costco rotisserie chicken and fresh vegetables from Whole Foods. This foodie's mom trained him to be cost-conscious and to scout for deals without sacrificing flavor or freshness. He can stretch tasty dishes he created at home for $10 to $20 into 4 or 5 meals. I don't overdo the budget or think too deeply about it, said Belpasso, who works in the tech industry. If I leave the supermarket and I haven't spent under $100, I'm happy. Our next article is titled Celebrating the 20th Anniversary of Cloud Computing. The author is Mark Salzman. Name something invisible you use every day. You answer the cloud. You're spot on. Sure, air and gravity work too. The fact that the cloud only debuted 2 decades ago makes its dominance pretty amazing. In fact, it's the cloud's 20th anniversary this month, forever changing the way we live, work, and play. To be more specific, it was AWS, or Amazon Web Services, that launches S3 in March 2006, a product of offering is widely considered the beginning of the modern cloud computing era. So what is the cloud? Well, quite simply, the cloud refers to storing and accessing your information and programs over the internet instead of on a local device. For consumers, you can stream a movie via Netflix just as easily as if the content were on a disk in your home. Do you access Gmail on several different devices, like a phone, tablet, or laptop? Well, this is possible as your messages are stored in the cloud. Same goes for uploading and viewing your photos on services such as Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Photos, and iCloud. Cloud computing relieves us from much of the drudgery work associated with keeping our own computing resources up and running, confirms Camille Levy, a veteran technology analyst with more than 2 decades of industry experience. We no longer need to worry about which software is installed on which device and whether it's been updated to the latest version. Nor do we have to manage large stores of data on our drives or sync them between different devices. For businesses, it could be costly and complicated to set up and run their own physical in-office servers. Cloud services allow them to manage investments in technology far more efficiently because they can be scaled up or down to accommodate fast-changing market conditions, adds Levy, based in London, Ontario. Having your data stored elsewhere protects your files from any local threats, like a cybersecurity attack, power outage, fire, or flood. Plus, you need to spend money on buying, maintaining, and fixing expensive hardware, or paying for excessive electricity. Instead, the cloud works on a subscription or pay-as-you-go fee. Like all new technology, some tech analysts, journalists, and executives questioned, or even pushed back against, cloud adoption. In an interview with The Guardian in 2008, Richard Stallman, founder of the Free Software Foundation, believed moving data to the web was stupidity. It's worse than stupidity. It's market hype campaign. Cloud computing is simply a trap aimed at forcing more people to buy into locked proprietary systems, Stallman said. Granted, there are always naysayers when new technology is introduced. With the cloud, many were legitimately curious or concerned about security, scalability, and costs. But it didn't take long for the cloud to prove itself. Most of the excitement for me is witnessing a new level of growth each year, said James Hamilton, Senior Vice President and a distinguished engineer at Amazon, who is widely regarded as one of the primary architects behind the massive physical and software infrastructure that powers AWS. Even though I've been doing this for 20 years, super exciting and rewarding. AWS is the largest cloud provider in the world with an estimated 28 to 29% of global market share, according to Synergy Research Group. Many consumer-faced brands such as Airbnb, Netflix, Lyft, Disney+, Twitch, and Spotify all run on AWS in some capacity behind the scenes. After working at Microsoft and IBM, Hamilton joined AWS in 2009 and is credited with pioneering the data center cost models that provide how cloud computing is less expensive than traditional on-premises hardware. Hamilton is always a major proponent of AWS building its own custom network hardware, power distribution systems, and even silicone, like the gravitation processors. Simplifying his modus operandi, Hamilton said his job to iron out even the odd blip or temporary outages. I'd say it's just about impossible to lead a modern life today and not be using literally tens of services on AWS, probably never know it. In some ways, that's the beauty of it. And I spend so much of my time and attention to making sure it's all invisible and seamless. Over time, even early cloud doubters had to admit the online service could be every bit as secure as traditional on-premises ones, Levy said. In fact, they turned out to be far more resilient, and most of us eventually learned to trust these once-questioned platforms, particularly as cloud providers continue to raise the bar, performance, affordability, security, and ease of use. While outages happen, they're rare. In 2025, across all major providers, uptime stayed above 99.99%, according to Incident Hub. To mitigate risk, Libby knows cloud providers offer robust cyber protection and redundancy. It refers to having backups. Think of it like a spare tire. In the event something goes awry, for example, a cloud server often has 2 or 3 mirrored hard drives. And so if one burns out, the others keep running without the computer ever turning off. And that your files aren't stored in just one spot. Cloud provider makes copies of all your data across multiple different hard drives. So what's next for iCloud? Supporting the rapid growth of AI, of course. Massive computation power is needed to run these AI systems, which are primarily in the cloud, as opposed to on-device processing of artificial intelligence prompts, is also growing in popularity. For example, a basic ChatGPT prompt consumes as much as 10 times the energy as a simple Google search. By automating complex resource management and enabling real-time data processing at scale, AI makes the cloud more efficient, productive, and indispensable for virtually all industries. Our next article is titled, Target Boycotts Picking Up Speed. The article is by Jessica Guillen and Betty Lynn Fisher. When Atlanta pastor Jamal Harrison Bryant called off his year-long Target fast, the announcement set off fireworks. At a hastily convened news conference in front of Target's Minneapolis headquarters March 11th, grassroots activists denounced Bryant, told the world the nationwide boycott over the company's rollback of diversity, equity, and inclusion was not his to end. Target shoppers, especially black women, mobbed his Instagram page to say he didn't speak for them. 2 days later on his podcast, Let's Be Clear, Bryant conceded he misread the room. I was reading from a different sheet of music, he said. I wanted to apologize to you for being a leader that was out of touch with what is in the community and we're demanding. When Target scrapped its DEI policy shortly after President Donald Trump took office, boycotts sprang up across the country, from church pulpits to community gatherings. The policy U-turn was widely viewed as a betrayal of black Americans who had propped up the retail giant's fortunes. The national uproar mostly died down till this new controversy put Target boycott back on the public's bullseye. Minneapolis civil rights activist and lawyer Akima Levy Armstrong, founder of the Racial Justice Network, launched a boycott in February 2025 with Monica Cullors Doty, co-founder of Black Lives Matter Minnesota, and Jelani Hussein, executive director of CAIR Minnesota. Armstrong told USA Today that black shoppers would not return to Target till it reverses course on DEI. Target's refusal to store DEI commitments makes it clear. The company is willing to lose black consumers and women, many already gone, in order to appease its MAGA customer base, Armstrong said. Target made a conscious choice to align with the Trump administration. We, the people, make a consensus choice to take our dollars elsewhere. Former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner said her organization, We Are Somebody, which called for a nationwide boycott the day after Target announced it was rolling back its DEI programs, was not letting up either. In a last meeting between organizers and Target leadership, corporate leadership was hostile toward the very idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion, Turner told USA Today. While Pastor Brian will be stepping away from our efforts, we plan not only to continue the boycott, but also to escalate our actions to hold corporations accountable. Shoppers who haven't set foot in a Target store for more than a year took to social media to make those feelings clear. Black woman said, We're not going to that goddamn store. Gina Meadows, age 45, a digital creator for Atlanta who encourages people to read more, said in her Instagram account. You can revamp, revive, renew, and we're not going back. Meadows used to shop at Target 2 or 3 times a week because the company made her feel seen with ads featuring black people and culture by stocking products for and by black people. Whether scouting for actress Tabitha Brown collaborations or a blender, she'd pop into Target just to see what was new. A date even took her to Target so they could get to know each other while strolling the aisles. One of the best dates I've ever been on, she said. But now the guy is history, and so is Target, she said. The black community is not a monolith, and plenty of black people still shop at Target. And those angry over his DEI capitulations are never going back, Meadows said. We don't need an apology. We don't need HBCU initiatives. We're done. It's dead. Like Meadows, Karen Jones, a 56-year-old retired employee of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and a longtime red card-toting shopper from Severn, Maryland, once relied on Target for everything. There's a one-stop shop for Christmas and Easter, her go-to no matter where she was living or what happening in her life, even when her oldest daughter was murdered last year. It was the most devastating thing I've ever gone through, she told USA Today. Sounds like a small thing, but when I went to get something to wear for her memorial service, I went to Target. It was the first place I thought to go. Jones said she'd not been back since the shift in Target's DEI policy. She has no plans to return to her old shopping haunt. Target, she said, has not earned her trust or her wallet. Having them make the decisions they made since this new administration has come in been very hurtful, just very hurtful, Jones said. We're just not a community that's going to go and throw money at a company that doesn't care about us, and I feel they don't care about us. Target declined to comment. In a prior statement, USA Today, Target said it was more committed than ever to creating growth and opportunity for all. We will continue to showing up as trusted neighbors while delivering results for our team members, guests in the more than 2,000 communities in which we serve, the company said in a statement, because when those communities thrive, so do we. Target was once one of the loudest corporate supporters of Black America, devoted shelf space to and touted collaborations with black businesses, showed up at the Essence Festival of Culture, an annual celebration of black culture. Racial justice emerged as an even higher priority for the 2020 killing of George Floyd, a few miles from its headquarters. The company plans to increase the number of black employees across the company by 20%, committed to spending more than $2 billion with black-owned businesses by the end of 2025. When Trump issued executive orders aimed at eliminating illegal DEI in the federal government and the private sector, Target joined the stampede from DEI's commitments. Major corporations jettisoned DEI programs to avoid inviting scrutiny from the White House. Diversity goals to boost the black workforce were tabled. Supplier diversity programs were rebranded and no longer considered race or gender. Target said at the time it was staying in step with the evolving eternal landscape. but the backpedaling put the company in a tricky position. For years, it had been beloved as Tarzay and profited from its close association with black communities and black-owned brands. Now church pastors and community activists have joined arms across the country against it. It wasn't Target's first time in the cultural crosshairs. Her groups opposing DEI launched boycotts in recent years over woke culture. Target responded by scaling back Pride Month merchandise, which angered LGBTQ plus customers. Growing pressures from activists on both sides, one of the top challenges facing Michael Fiddelek, who took over as CEO in August, according to David Pramo, professor of political science and business administration at the University of Rochester in New York. Target has reported 13 straight quarters of sluggish sales. Company officials have admitted that shopper anger has contributed. Target remains a battleground for activists on the left and right, and its new CEO hasn't yet figured out how to extricate company from this role, Primo said. Fiddelek already faces a huge challenge in turning around a company with significant operating issues. This certainly doesn't help matters. Fiddelek recently laid out a $6 billion turnaround plan that calls for new investments in stores, workers, and technology. He also slashed prices on more than 3,000 products. The reality is, while the boycotts do have something of a financial impact on Target, they are not the primary cause of the chain's sales slump. That decline had set long before DEI was an issue, and is driven by poor execution, especially in stores around things like pricing, service, and out of stocks, said Neil Sanders, directing manager of global data retail. That said, the boycotts are unhelpful, and they create a lot of negative noise. The negative noise came up in a recent interview that Fiddelek gave to the Wall Street Journal, in which we acknowledged that Target has not been clear enough about who we are. Paul Argenti, a professor of corporate communications at Dartmouth's Tuck School of Business, said Target needs to be a lot clearer and more credible with its customers. Stockholders are testing whether Target's actions, messaging, and values are aligned over time. Argenti said, in these moments, companies have three choices: recalibrate strategy, reinforce their positions with clear rationale, or retreat. The worst outcome is ambiguity. Our actions and messages don't clearly signal which path they've chosen. We now have to return to the first section of USA Today, because we've run out of articles in the money section this week. And our next article is titled we're not going to be able to complete all of this, but controversial plan to cut food costs would kill animals faster. Raising limits would just risk safety, some critics say. The article is by Jean Santucci and Denity Yancey-Bragg. Federal limits on how fast slaughterhouses are allowed to kill chickens, turkeys, and pigs could soon be raised under a new proposal by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. It's a plan the Trump administration said will reduce rising grocery costs, but critics say it compromises on safety. The USDA announced in February it's putting forth proposals that said would help reduce production costs, remove outdated regulations, and make food and processing more efficient, creating a more resilient food supply in the United States. The proposals lay out a higher cap on the number of animals per minute or hour allowed to be killed at facilities in the United States and estimate the dollar amount that could be saved per pound of meat produced. But increasing line speeds could lead to less safe food and less safe conditions for workers, said Gerald Monde, former Deputy Undersecretary of Food Safety at USDA. Monde told USA Today it's unlikely that changes will lead to lower costs at the supermarket. It predicted that if anything, food production companies will pocket savings themselves. Those supporting increased line speeds are swapping their profits for our health, said Monday, CEO of child nutrition nonprofit Nourisscience. USDA has reached out to the USDA for comment on the proposed change. USDA has submitted 2 proposals to the Federal Registry to undergo a public comment period. One would affect poultry slaughter facilities and the other pork. Both apply to facilities that participate in certain types of inspections. The new poultry inspection system, the new swine slaughter inspection system, which covers the majority of facilities in the country. The proposal for poultry would raise the acceptable rate of kills measured in birds per minute for young chickens and turkeys. For chicken, the rate would increase to 175 BPM from 140. According to the United Food and Commercial Workers International Union, 140 BPM is slightly faster than the tempo of Michael Jackson's Beat It, except each beat is a chicken being killed. For turkeys, the rate would go to 60 BPM from 55. According to the USDA, as of 2024, there are more than 9.4 billion young chickens slaughtered in facilities around the country. 94% of those were killed at facilities that fall under the inspection system and are subject to raising line speeds. About 79% of the 158 million turkeys slaughtered in 2024 were at facilities subject to increasing their rates. Some facilities covered by the inspection system already received rate increase waivers, the USDA said. Another proposal would eliminate a maximum line speed limit for swine altogether and allow facilities to set their own speeds. Their limit before was 1,106 per hour. And about 64.4% of 127.8 million hogs slaughtered in 2024 were at facilities covered by the proposed rate increase. 6 facilities with waivers already in place were slaughtering 1,276 per hour, according to the USDA. You're listening to a reading of articles from USA Today for the 23rd day of March on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Services. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for the first hour was Tom Scanlon.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Val, and I'll start with sports. First article is called Proving a Point. It's about March Madness. Coaches of all tiers understand mid-major scheduling frustrations. This is by Jordan Mendoza. As the mid-majors continued to succeed in the men's NCAA tournament, the noise around the difficulty in getting opportunities to prove themselves gets louder. After number 12 seed High Point knocked off number 5 Wisconsin in the first round, Coach Flynn Clayman drew attention when he said his team couldn't get games against major opponents. It's pretty obvious to me that something needs to be done about this non-conference scheduling, he said. That team, Wisconsin, is a fantastic team that beat 5 top 10 teams. If we can get games like this on neutral courts and some home games, I think we'd know who's really the best teams. It's been a major talking point this season, mostly surrounding the historic season Miami of Ohio had. Despite going 31-0 in the regular season, its NCAA tournament resume was debated because of the quality of the opponents the Red Hawks faced, not facing any quad 1 or 2 opponents during the campaign. However, Extra Points reported Miami of Ohio tried to schedule several Power 4 conference teams but weren't successful, highlighting the struggle mid-major teams face in trying to prove themselves. With Miami of Ohio beating SMU in the first 4 and High Point and VCU advancing to the second round, they showed they could hang with Power 4 conference teams. Ahead of playing Arkansas, Clayman said his comments were misunderstood, and the main issue he has is high major teams don't really benefit from playing teams like his. They are doing what's best for their program. I would love to see a system for fans and for the game of college basketball where it's better for them to play these games, he said. I've seen over time that now the good mid-majors don't get a chance to play anymore because of the system. If we can just tweak that a little bit, then they'll be right back to playing. I put zero blame on high major programs for doing what's best for him, he added. It's a similar sentiment to what Miami coach Travis Steele said after it lost to Tennessee in the first round, mentioning how so much of the struggle is analytically driven and things such as KenPom and the NET rankings need adjustments. There's been plenty said from the mid-major coaches, but what about those in charge of the major programs? Arkansas John Calipari, as well as Gonzaga's Mark Few, know all about it. Calipari got his start at UMass and recalled playing 2-for-1s, 2 games at a Power 4 school for 1 home game, and how it was frustrating even then to get that. We did anything we could to schedule games, to get home games. I've been there. It's hard, Calipari said. No one wants to play a team that they think are going to be really good, and they're not going to do it on the road. You're just not going to go for the road. That's why I was doing 2-for-1s. Calipari recommended High Point for its season, noting, do you know how good they must be and well coached to have 31 wins? He mentioned how getting administrative investment is a key for mid-majors to reach the next level of success. Arkansas did play an NCAA tournament team in the regular season in Queens and barely beat another notable mid-major in Winthrop. No one may be better suited to talk about it than Few. With Gonzaga since 1989 and in charge since 1999, he's led the Bulldogs' evolution from a mid-major trying to prove itself to a national power. The simplest way to get those games in Few's eyes? Be a consistent winner, starting with the big dance. We were in that plight 25 years ago. You just have to win. You have to break through in the tournament. The tournament gives you an avenue to do that and a stage to do that. Once you do that, you do it a couple of years in a row, and then you're able to get those games, Few said. He added, of all things needed to become a national power, scheduling was by far the most difficult thing to do, needing sustained success rather than little spurts of stardom to gain respect. It's not something you're going to be given. You're going to have to go out and earn it. You're going to have to go out and earn it for quite a while, Few said. Once you prove yourselves, everybody wants to play you. While there isn't any indication changes will be made or not, mid-major teams have proved they can back up their outstanding records by playing with the big boys. It may be frustrating to deal with ahead and during the season, but when these teams reach the NCAA tournament, there's no way to avoid them any longer. It only helps their case when you let those Cinderella stories thrive. I think there were some teams that ducked us this year, but I mean, like Coach Flynn says, we're here now, says High Point forward Cameron Fletcher. There's no ducking it anymore. Nancy Armour has written a column that says wins, not statistics, matter the most now. Wins are the only thing that matters this time of year. If you want to chase an individual record, you do it in the regular season, which is why it was absolutely the right call for Notre Dame basketball coach Neil Ivey to sit Hannah Hidalgo out for the last 5 minutes of a 79-60 blowout of Fairfield on March 21st in the women's NCAA tournament, even with Hidalgo chasing a quadruple double. If Notre Dame is going to do anything in this tournament, it's going to need its force of nature guard to be at her best in every game. The Irish cannot afford her to have heavy legs or rubber arms or anything else that would be a byproduct of Hidalgo being fatigued. Hidalgo said she didn't even know she was closing in on a quadruple double. Even if she had, she agreed with Ivey's decision. This was a first-round game. With Notre Dame sitting on a big lead, this was an opportunity to get Hidalgo and the other starters extra recovery time ahead of a tough game against Ohio State on March 23rd. I've got to rest up. Got another one on Monday, Hidalgo told ESPN. Getting a quadruple double would have been historic for Hidalgo. According to the NCAA record books, it's never been done in either the women's or the men's tournaments. Even getting a triple-double in the tournament is a rarity. As it was, she set the Notre Dame record for steals in an NCAA tournament game with 8. She also had 23 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists. But keeping her in the game to chase an individual stat would have sent the wrong message about what's most important to Notre Dame right now, winning or Hidalgo being the answer to a trivia question. Right now, it's all about winning, Hidalgo said. There's no guarantee Hidalgo would have gotten the record if Ivey had kept her on the floor anyway. When Hidalgo left the game with 5:02 left to play, she needed a rebound, 2 steals, and 4 assists. The rebounds and the steals were probably gettable. Hidalgo had 2 steals in the same possession in the first quarter, but finding 4 assists would have required Notre Dame to set her up every time the Irish had the ball. It was doable, sure, but it wasn't the right thing to do, not under these circumstances. I'm really proud of where we are right now. I'm proud of the way that we're playing, Ivy said. I think every time we step on the floor, we're getting better and better. With almost an entirely new roster, this was Notre Dame's worst season in 5 years, only the third time in the last 19 years that the Irish have had double-digit losses. Continued improvement has to be the priority, especially when the coach of their next appointment knows Ivy and her team as well as he knows his own. Ohio State coach Kevin McGruff was a Notre Dame assistant the entire time Ivy played there, and the two remained so close that Ivy is godmother to one of his daughters. McGruff's wife, Letitia, also a former Notre Dame player, was director of basketball operations when Ivy played and is still one of her best friends. He's family, Ivy said. I hate that this was the road, obviously, but he's somebody that I love. I love their whole family, and it's going to be exciting to play them on Monday. Anyone who's a Hoops fan should be drooling over the matchup between 6th-seeded Notre Dame and 3rd-seeded Ohio State because it features two of the best point guards in the game. Hidalgo is, well, Hidalgo, a whirling dervish who can pick your pocket, break your ankles, and light up the scoreboard. Jelani Cambridge is a speedster who puts the gas in Ohio State's high-octane motor. She can just as easily hurt you on the boards as she can make her teammates look good. It's awesome. You want to see great basketball. You want to see great players compete at the highest level, Ivy said. I think we will have two of the best players on the floor Monday. That means Hidalgo will have to be at her best, not feeling sluggish or nursing a knock from the closing minutes of the Fairfield game. Hidalgo is only a junior. There will be plenty of chances to hunt quadruple doubles and other individual achievements next season. Right now, winning is the only thing that matters. Gabe Locks has written 3 days of MLB openers. As Major League Baseball teams prepare for their final days of spring training in Arizona and Florida, opening day is lurking, all 3 of them. With a made-for-streaming standalone game and a handful of 3-game series spread over 4 days, all 30 teams will open over a 3-day period as a handful of new national television windows debut. The openers will also have a decidedly interleague look at them, as 7 of the 15 series will match up American and National League teams. And while many teams build an off day into the second day of the season to allow for inclement weather, 8 of the openers will be held in climate-controlled or warm weather venues. The MLB season begins with the New York Yankees against the San Francisco Giants on March 25th with an 8:05 p.m. Eastern Time matchup broadcast exclusively on Netflix. Left-handed Max Fried will start for the Yankees, opposed by Logan Webb for the Giants, whose manager, Tony Vitello, will be making his professional debut. Vitello is the first manager to leap directly into collegiate coaching, from collegiate coaching at Tennessee to the top spot in a big league dugout. The Yankees and Giants are off May 26th before concluding their series the following 2 days, including the Fox Sports national broadcast on March 28th. The Atlanta Braves versus Kansas City Royals, Toronto Blue Jays versus the Athletics, and Miami Marlins versus the Colorado Rockies open March 27th. All 3 series are of the 3-game variety and these clubs opted to play 3 days in a row rather than use Friday as the potential weather makeup day. Miami and Toronto play in dome stadiums anyway. The season openers on March 26th, with all times Eastern Daylight, the Pittsburgh Pirates at the New York Mets at 1:15 p.m., Chicago White Sox at Milwaukee Brewers at 2:10, Washington Nationals at Chicago Cubs at 2:20, Minnesota Twins at Baltimore Orioles at 3:05, Boston Red Sox at Cincinnati Reds at 4:10, Los Angeles Angels at Houston Astros at 4:10, Detroit Tigers at San Diego Padres at 4:10, Tampa Bay Rays at St. Louis Cardinals at 4:15 p.m., Texas Rangers at Philadelphia Phillies at 4:15 p.m., Arizona Diamondbacks at LA Dodgers at 8:30 p.m. on NBC, and Cleveland Guardians at Seattle Mariners at 10:10 p.m. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 10:51 a.m. The next article is on college wrestling by Frank Bodani. We're a blessed program after owning the NCAA again. When it was finally over, these 3 days of nonstop wrestling, they celebrated with customary hugs and backslaps and photos on the elevated mat in the middle of Rocket Arena. The Penn State wrestling team had dominated yet another NCAA championship, celebrated another record-setting performance, and acted as if the routine does not tire. What's another 4 individual national champs, or setting an NCAA team points record for the 3rd year in a row? The Nittany Lions also owned the award presentations, starting with their effusive, philosophical, and undefeated scoring machine, Mitchell Mesenbrink, the one who always seems to be smiling, whether signing kids' autographs or throwing down opponents with blood leaking from above his left eye. Yes, these Nittany Lions, winners of their 5th straight team championship, were special, even by their own high-grade standards. It was about more, they say, than blowing away the rest of the tournament field, even while overcoming excruciating defeats and a few missteps. Listen to how Coach Cole Sanderson explained what it means. We work each day. We love what we do. We love each other. The kids in the program, the staff we work with, that's what it's all about, he said immediately after Luke Liljedahl won the Lions' 4th individual title. Seeing those guys every day is what motivates me. We're a blessed program. We follow the rules. There's not a lot of that going on right now. That's one of the reasons we can sleep when the wind blows. We train hard and do the right things to the best of our ability, and things will work out. The magic in it may be how thoroughly this team dominated to win its remarkable 13th title in the last 15 years, even while suffering those letdowns or embracing those team moments, as Sanderson described them. Though Penn State rolled into the semifinals at an unprecedented pace, it suffered 2 gut-wrenching defeats there in overtime, then 2 more tight losses in the finals on March 21st. Shane Van Ness and Rocco Welsh saw their undefeated seasons abruptly vanish at the end of their championship matches at 149 and 184 pounds, with much of the packed pro-Ohio State crowd roaring their approval. Of course, the Lions still lifted up overall by first-time title winners Lillidahl and Josh Barr, and by two-timers Mesenbrink and Levi Haines, the only senior, stunningly enough, who wrestled his final Penn State match this weekend. That means the Nittany Lions will return nearly their entire lineup, including true freshman stars P.J. Duke and Marcus Blaze, who stumbled just a bit to third and fourth place finishes. Both had national title hopes. I mean, each kid, it's just a process. And sometimes the best that can happen to you is you've got to learn, Sanderson said. Tough losses can change a career for the better and help you make those changes that will let you reach your ultimate goal at the highest level. Losing is no fun. We hate it. It stinks. And don't wish it on anybody. But it's part of life. You just keep fighting, keep getting back up, and things will work out. Things do certainly seem to, more often and more thoroughly for Penn State than anyone else, especially for those like Haines, who wrestled his 5 NCAA matches as if no one could possibly take them from him. Or like Mesenbrink, who wrestled faster and more freely than maybe anybody else in the finals to win his second straight title. He delivered Penn State's only high-scoring bonus point victory of the evening, dismantling Iowa's Mickey Caliendo for the 9th straight time. It ended, after all, as a particularly satisfying coronation for a team that had overwhelmed opponents in the regular season and the Big Ten championships like never before, one in the midst of an NCAA record-winning streak. They gave a performance that still overran second-place Oklahoma State by 50 points, even as the Cowboys and former Penn State star coach David Taylor had them rising expeditiously. Cameron Jordan wrote an article about LIV golf. Emotional Bryson takes down Rahm in a playoff to win. Bryson DeChambeau is the hottest golfer in the world going into the Masters. Is it his time to finally slide on the green jacket? DeChambeau took down Jon Rahm on the first playoff hole, March 22nd, to win the 2026 LIV Golf South Africa, his second straight win, in his final start before heading down Magnolia Lane in a little more than 2 weeks. DeChambeau, the two-time U.S. Open champion, hit a brilliant shot into the par 5 18th in the playoff to set up a 2-birdie putt, enough to topple Rahm and win LIV's inaugural event in South Africa. After sinking his winning putt, DeChambeau was overcome with emotion unlike anything he has shown in the past. A lot has happened in the past week, he said. I'm just so grateful for my team, the Crushers, everybody supporting me. It's so funny. Golf is a fickle game, and you work so hard at it your whole entire life, and you realize that golf is just golf, and there's a lot more to life than just golf. I had some things happen in the off time this week, and I was just praying all day, praying to give me the perseverance to move forward and keep looking forward. DeChambeau would go on to call South Africa the best event LIV Golf has ever had. The league's third time playing in as many weeks, the event at the club in Stain City will host LIV again from April 22nd to 25th, 2027, it was announced. Rahm shot 8 under 63 in the final round to vault to 26 under to tie DeChambeau, who was unable to get up and down from a bunker for birdie on the closing hole to win in regulation. DeChambeau carded a bogey-free 66 in the final round, continuing a trend of stellar golf leading into the year's first major. Last week, DeChambeau won in a playoff after his opponent, Richard T. Lee, missed a 2-footer to extend. This week, his brilliant 3-wood stole the title from Rahm. Had to be done. John, there was a very good chance I thought he was going to stiff it, DeChambeau said. That 3-wood in there, I thought he was going to stiff it. I was fortunate enough to get a good lie. It was muddy, so I'm trying to aim over there, worst case scenario, and I just pulled it again, and I knew I'd be okay and get somewhat of a lie. I got a great lie. I dropped it, and I got to place it, luckily, and then had a perfect lie, and striped it to the middle of the green, and it fed right over to 12 feet, and I was not going to leave myself a 3-footer on that one. LIV Golf, next event, come to the week after the Masters in Mexico City at Chapultepec. Jordan Mendoza says, don't think that Texas is a Cinderella in March. Do you know that feeling when trying on clothes and physically it fits, but really it doesn't? There's just something off. Maybe it doesn't look good. Maybe it's not the right style. Maybe it really isn't a reason other than it just isn't right. That's exactly what's going on in the men's NCAA tournament. A spectacle that is built on chaos hasn't had much of it, with the 2026 edition producing just 4 double-digit first-round winners. Only one of them is moving on to the Sweet 16, meaning we'll get a single Cinderella. And who will be the lucky one riding the carriage? Texas? Oh, that's no Cinderella. In March Madness, one size does not, in fact, fit all. I don't think we ever really want to sign up to be the Cinderella story, said Texas coach Sean Miller, because we are the University of Texas. It's a puzzling juxtaposition. The tournament always calls for an underdog to root for, but you can't be much of one when you, check notes, recorded $331.9 million in operating revenue and a $325 million in operating expenses in the 2024 fiscal year. Even though this was its 9th NCAA tournament win as a double-digit seed, Texas is so far from a Cinderella, one could argue it's the evil stepsister. To their credit, the Longhorns tried not to be one. They just weren't really successful at it. Sure, it had some notable wins, but it also lost to Duke in the season opener, finished 6th in a not-so-loaded Maui Invitational, had an 8-9 quad 1 record to go with 1-4 quad 2 mark and a quad 3 loss. In some ways, the first couple of months of our season were very much a work in progress, Miller said. Texas limped into the tournament with a 3-game losing streak that pushed it into having to play in the first 4. Not ideal, but it did something that you never want to give teams with potential, an opportunity. We had a players-only meeting, and we just talked about what we just needed, a chance, said Texas guard Dalen Swain. A chance Texas has taken full advantage of. The Longhorns edged North Carolina State in the first 4, completely outperformed A.J. Disbanza and the BYU in the first round, and on the night of March 21st in Portland, were one step ahead of a veteran Gonzaga squad playing in its own backyard. That's not so much a Cinderella, but a team playing up to the capabilities and expectations set on it. It just so happens there's a little number 11 right next to the Longhorns' name. We're all adults here in this room, said Gonzaga coach Mark Few. Few of these monikers we put on everybody from Cinderella to Blue Bloods and all that, I have a hell of a time understanding. I mean, they literally make no sense. That's not a Cinderella team. That's a really talented basketball team with a really, really good coach that has incredible resources and has a great history of doing great things in the tournament. It's just an 11 seed that had some tough losses during the year, he said. The result might say something larger about the state of Cinderellas. This will now be back-to-back years without them. Yes, Texas ensures there'll be a double-digit seed in the Sweet 16, which has happened in every tournament except 2007 since expanding in 1985. But last year's representative was Arkansas, a program that threw $7 million at John Calipari to get him to leave Kentucky. The one before that barely counts because at the end of the day, NC State is an ACC team with a rich history. While we frantically wonder if the mid-majors are truly toast from making deep runs in the big dance, you have to give Texas credit. The expectation isn't for Texas to lose 14 games in a season, but it is expected to do exactly what it's doing right now. This is not the same team that lost 5 of its last 6 games. Jordan Pope is playing like an elite guard expected when he transferred from Oregon State in 2024. Matas Fotolaitis is completely commanding the interior, dominating any big man that dares get in his way. Sean Miller is showing why this will be the 9th Sweet 16 trip, deciding to put in Camden Heide to hit the three-pointer dagger against the Bulldogs. This looks like a real SEC contender. The road to it wasn't pretty, and that's what makes Texas a great story. It figured it out at the right time when a lot of people counted the Longhorns out. It makes them easy to root for. The Longhorns should celebrate this and have a mindset of a giant slayer when they arrive at the Sweet 16. You are listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 9 minutes after the hour, and I'll be reading from the Life section. The first article is by Brian Truitt. Wood is ready for the new golden age of horror. Elijah Wood is one of the few people in the horror comedy sequel, Ready or Not 2, Here I Come, who doesn't get stabbed, shot, blown up into gooey pieces, have a bazooka aimed at them, or otherwise is marked for death. Instead, he's too busy making sure everybody's playing a very twisted game right. Wood is no stranger to franchises, as brave Frodo in the Lord of the Rings movies and very weird Walter in Showtime's popular Yellow Jackets, and was a big fan of the crowd-pleasing 2019 hit Ready or Not. The third act of that film is so satisfying, says the actor, who became a familiar face in scary movies and a champion of them with his production company, Spectre Vision. The sequel, in theaters now, picks up exactly where the previous one left off. Newlywed Grace, acted by Samara Weaving, survives an insane night when her powerful new in-laws try to sacrifice her to their devilish benefactor, Mr. Lee Bale, in a deadly round of hide-and-seek. But the fact that she gets out alive begins a whole new game. The Council of Families that control the world have to figure out a new high seat, and either one of those family members kills Grace, or Grace herself gets the power if she survives again. Wood, 45, is an incredibly mysterious character known as the Lawyer, an advocate for Mr. Lee Bale, who, rather than actively participating, makes sure everyone's following the rules, Wood says. But the stakes don't apply to him, certainly not the life and death stakes. It was something we talked about a lot. Like, who actually is this guy? Has he been doing this for centuries? Is he immortal? What is his relationship to Mr. Lee Bale, and how long has he been sort of presiding over the council? Don't have any definitive answer, but it was something I was thinking about a lot. Wielding his ancient rule book, the lawyer spends much of the movie watching the carnage occur as a pair of sadistic twins, Sarah Michelle Gellar and Sean Hattasey, and other hunters try to track down and murder Grace and Faith, played by Catherine Newton, who is her estranged sister. Blood splatters and bodies combust, with the lawyer ducking to avoid being hit by gore. One of Wood's favorite bits is his character's reaction when Grace figures out a way to turn the game in her favor. He actually genuinely finds that sort of amusing because he has no skin in the game, Wood says. He must be a little tired of watching very obnoxious, wealthy people fumble over themselves for their position of power. Maybe he's quietly judging them. I don't know. He certainly isn't one of them. Wood got to share an early scene with David Cronenberg, the iconic director who plays a patriarch in Here I Come. I was definitely nervous to spend time with him because he's such an icon and I love his films so much, Wood says. But he immediately kind of puts you at ease, and he's very disarming, very sweet. Wood has notched a career as a successful horror filmmaker. He co-founded Spectre Vision in 2010 and has been a producer on films such as A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, Rabbit Trap, and a pair of regarded Nicolas Cage movies, Mandy and Color Out of Space. When Spectre Vision started, there weren't a lot of horror films being made that it felt like they were taking their subject rather seriously. That has since totally changed, said Wood. We're in this really golden period where horror is valued, Wood says. It reminds him of the 1970s, with movies such as Don't Look Now, The Exorcist, and The Omen. They weren't schlocky. They were super well written, had incredible casts, and happened to be expletive terrifying. He'll start work soon on the final season of Showtime's Yellow Jackets. Wood is cagier about his involvement with The Lord of the Rings, The Hunt for Gollum. Expected out next year, the adventure is directed by Andy Serkis, who reprises Gollum and brings back Ian McKellen as Gandalf. Perhaps Wood, too, as Frodo, though I'm not sure is all he can say now. It really is starting to feel like getting the old band back together in such a special way. I'm thrilled to see that it can come together. The next article on stage is by Patrick Ryan. Masquerade deepens Phantom legacy. Steps away from Carnegie Hall and Brooklyn Diner, there's an unsuspecting art supply shop with newspaper plastered windows. But walk inside the Midtown storefront, and you'll be whisked into the 19th century Paris Opera House, where a masked genius haunts the halls and an iconic chandelier crashes to the floor. Welcome to Masquerade, a fully immersive production of The Phantom of the Opera that opened off-Broadway last fall. It's a wildly ambitious and richly emotional new staging of Andrew Lloyd Webber's 1988 Broadway musical, performed concurrently every night by 6 casts, who guide audiences from the Phantom's eerie underground lair to the star-filled rooftops of Manhattan. Nothing has ever been attempted like this in musical theater before, Webber tells USA Today. Everything is so minutely timed down to the very last millisecond. It's an extraordinary technical feat. For his part, I enjoyed it madly. It was great fun to be on an adventure. Masquerade follows the familiar beats you know and love from Phantom, which traces the doomed romance between the disfigured opera ghost and the young soprano, Christine Deney, the target of his dangerous obsession and tragic longing. But the production also goes to great lengths to better understand the Phantom, with a nightmarish carnival sequence where we first meet him as a young man in a cage. The unsettling scene challenges the audience's empathy as cast members implore theatergoers to rattle his cage and feed him. It's a bit of a Rorschach test, like, how do we react in these situations? Director Diane Paulus says, At every performance, there are people who just sit by the cage and hold the Phantom's hand. And if you hang around long enough, the Phantom might even pass you a note offering deeper insight into his backstory and how he was left by his mother. The sideshow is quite confronting and disturbing because of the nature of the violence and the assault on your senses, says Marie Johnson, who has portrayed ballet mistress Madame Giry both on and off Broadway. It's a mob mentality, and sometimes you see that with the audience. After the Phantom escapes the carnival, Giry takes the facially deformed outcast under her wing, giving him shelter in the opera house and fostering his musical prowess. She also sings Learn to Be Lonely, a new song to the musical that first appeared in Joel Schumacher's 2004 big screen adaptation starring Gerard Butler and Emily Rossum. The ballad originally was targeted No One Would Listen and sung by the Phantom in his lair. But when the sequence was cut from the movie, Weber repurposed the melody for the end credits number Learn to Be Lonely, which was performed by Minnie Driver and nominated for an Academy Award for Original Song. When I was going through everything for Masquerade with Diane, we felt that we only touched on the Phantom's backstory in the movie, and that it would be really good to have something for Madame Giry, Weber explains. We felt that Learn to Be Lonely was really quite apt for her, and it works rather touchingly in Masquerade. It also is the last instrumental music you hear of the evening as you leave the space. The song might seem rather depressing, taken at face value, with lyrics about learning to laugh at your loneliness and be your own companion. It's a very harsh way of talking to someone, Johnson says, but in the context of the show, it comes from a very nurturing place. Giry historically is such a tough character. She's had to learn to be lonely in this world, which has given her an iciness and distance. By doing this flashback, you get to see her vulnerability. For Weber, the song is really about saying the world will always reject you and they won't see you for who you are, he says. There really wasn't a place for this song before because the original stage show is so incredibly tightly constructed, but it's sort of found a use now, even if it's not where we originally intended it. Weber would love Evita on Broadway. Masquerade opened off-Broadway just 2 years after Phantom closed in April 2023 at the Majestic Theater. Although sales had slowed down for the Broadway production after the COVID-19 lockdown, the beloved musical played to sold-out crowds in its final months and still holds the record for the longest-running show in Broadway history, having played nearly 14,000 performances over 35 years. That should never have closed. It was ridiculous, Weber says. It just had its best ever year in London last year. It was a stupid decision to close it up, and it will be very interesting to see if the Majestic ever has anything in there that, oh, never mind, he laughed. Similar to the late Stephen Sondheim, Weber, 77, has been increasingly open to have his work reinterpreted in recent years. Just last summer, Wicked star Cynthia Erivo played the Messiah in Jesus Christ Superstar at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles, and the Pussycat Dolls' Nicole Scherzinger won a Tony Award for a stripped-down Broadway revival of Sunset Boulevard. And this spring, a queer ballroom take on Cats, dubbed Cats, the Jellicle Ball, will open at Broadway's Broadhurst Theater. It's very good news to have new directors and new thoughts, Weber says. If a piece is any good, it can stand the test of time with many, many productions. It's interesting to let them go. You can't have everything precisely as it was done before, but what's common to all of them is that the music hasn't changed. Musically, Jesus Christ Superstar was exactly as it was at the Hollywood Bowl in the 1970s. Just this month, Jamie Lloyd's radical reworking of Evita in London earned 5 Olivier Award nominations, including Best Musical Revival. Theater fans have been clamoring for a Broadway transfer ever since the production's West End run last summer, where the classic Don't Cry for Me, Argentina was performed nightly from an outside balcony. I'm afraid with Evita there are still some hoops to be gone through, but I'd love it to go. It's an extraordinary production, Weber says, of a potential New York outing. The one thing that absolutely cannot happen is what we did in London on the balcony. We can't do that in New York. I mean, something awful could happen. We have gun laws in Britain. Regardless of what lies ahead for Evita, the legendary British composer remains more prolific than ever, with London revivals of Cats and Jesus Christ Superstar coming this summer. Plus, Weber teases, I'm currently writing 2 musicals at once at the moment, and they couldn't be more different. It's very exciting this year, but hopefully next year I'll have 2 new ones. We'll see. You are listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 25 minutes after the hour. Aaron Johnson has written an article called Anger Simmers in JFK Jr. Bissett's Story. The penultimate episode of FX's love story, the John F. Kennedy and Carolyn Bessette, dramatizes the enlarging faults plaguing the marriage of the titular characters before their untimely deaths. At episode 8's end, John, played by Paul Anthony Kelly, leaves the Tribeca apartment he shares with Carolyn, played by Sarah Pidgeon, for a hotel following an ugly fight just days before their final flight. On July 16, 1999, a plane piloted by Kennedy Jr. crashed. The couple were headed for Hyannisport for his cousin Rory Kennedy's wedding. Bissette's sister, Lauren Bessette, was also on board. The series finale will air on March 26th at 9 p.m. and stream on Hulu. Amid recent criticism from Kennedy Jr.'s nephew, congressional candidate Jack Schlossberg, ex-girlfriend, actress Daryl Hannah, and USA Today's TV critic Kelly Lawler, we're here to help you separate the facts from the fictionalized. At the beginning of the episode, John comes home from a book launch to Carolyn and a big bag of Kentucky Fried Chicken. The presence of the popular fast food chain seems like it could be an out-of-place product placement, but the pair did dine on Colonel Sanders' cuisine, according to Elizabeth Beller's book, Once Upon a Time, The Captivating Life of Carolyn Bessette Kennedy, on which the series is based. Carolyn and John had home routines, Bessette's friend Hamilton Smith told Beller. When butler Efigio Pinheiro didn't cook, and usually he did, Carolyn had one recipe, roast chicken with lemon and garlic. If it wasn't one of those 2, then they ordered in, sometimes even Kentucky Fried Chicken. When Carolyn learns in Love Story that Princess Diana was killed in a car accident, she's in shock. Shortly after midnight in Paris on August 31st, 1997, Diana's car, also carrying romantic partner Dadi Fayed and driven by Ritz Paris security employee Henri Paul, struck with a concrete pillar in the Pointe d'Alma tunnel in a misguided attempt to outrun photographers. Carolyn tells John in Love Story that she sat right behind Diana at Gianni Versace's festival on July 22nd, 1997 in Milan. The Princess, Bissette, Naomi Campbell, Elton John, and Sting were among the notable attendees and were photographed together. Former Calvin Klein publicist Bissette, who did sit in the row behind Diana at the Milan Cathedral, was forthcoming about her despair concerning the circumstances of Diana's death, Beller writes. John remained quiet for the most part, though he was also affected. Carolyn tried to get John to call Princes William and Harry to give his condolences when it came out that Diana had hoped for her sons to emulate John's modesty in the face of media obsession, Beller continues. He demurred as he didn't know them and thought, perhaps incorrectly, that their situations differed greatly. In Love Story, John hobbles about the couple's apartment after an earlier crash over which Carolyn expresses concern. Didn't you promise, Sister Carolyn Kennedy, you were done with flying? Carolyn inquires. Since when are you so concerned about what Carolyn wants? John replies. While spending Memorial Day weekend 1999 at the waterfront Martha's Vineyard property purchased by his late mother, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, and dubbed Redgate Farm, Kennedy Jr. decided to take his Buckeye for a flight. The vehicle looks a little like a go-kart with a motor in the back and a parachute attached. Everything went according to plan, Beller writes in Once Upon a Time, until a gust of wind blew John and the Buckeye into a shrub. John had broken his ankle, Beller writes. He was told he would need surgery to repair his ankle and 6 weeks in a cast to heal. Carolyn criticizes the Kennedys' Hyannisport, Massachusetts property in Love Story. It's not relaxing, she bemoans. Every minute of the day is accounted for. We can't sleep in. We can't sit on the beach. We can't go for a walk. There's no privacy, so we can never have sex. But Beller's book claims that Bissette did enjoy Hyannisport. It seemed a place where she felt welcomed. She enjoyed her time at the compound, Beller said, adding that Matt Berman, the creative director of Kennedy's George magazine, said Carolyn sometimes preferred to stay in bed with the dogs and snack while at the compound. A fight erupts between John and Carolyn in episode 8, in which the duo exchange scorching barbs. John says his late mother would have never approved of their relationship, and Carolyn reveals her mom, Anna Messina Freeman, discouraged their union during the wedding weekend. It's like you to have no identity outside of your own victimhood, John tells her. You love how hated I am, Carolyn responds. Of course you do, because you're American son, and I am just another tragedy you bravely endure. With that, John taps out and begins packing. He plans to stay at the Stanhope Hotel just for a day or two. Although Carolyn begs him to stay, he says he doesn't want to fight. I'm coming back, I promise, he assures her, adding an I love you and kissing on top of her head. In his final days, Kennedy Jr. did stay at the Stanhope Hotel, according to Once Upon a Time. Supposedly, he and Bissette had a heated fight on Tuesday, July 13th, 1999, about her joining Kennedy Jr. at Rory Kennedy's wedding, which they'd have to leave for on Friday, July 16th. She needed a break. She felt she had done her share of Kennedy events for the time being, Beller writes. Carolyn and John's fight turned into an enormous blow-up, with John losing ever more patience and Carolyn feeling ever more like an afterthought. Wednesday, Kennedy Jr., Bissette, and her sister Lauren had lunch at the Stanhope, in which Bissette agreed to go to the wedding, according to their book. Their meeting signified a truce of sorts, Beller states. Under Lifeline, Making Waves, Jason Earls. Hannah Montana star Jason Earls is coming clean. The actor, 48, revealed on the Best of Both of Our Worlds podcast that he pretended to be younger when he auditioned for his role of older brother Jackson Stewart on the Disney Channel series. I lied to them and told them I was 18 years old, Earls acknowledged. No one found out until halfway through the first season that he was in fact 28, playing a 16-year-old character. But Earls said the series showrunner later thanked him for lying, noting that if he had been honest, we would have recasted you. Birthdays today include actor-director Mark Rydell, who turns 97, mandolin player David Grisman, 81, and keyboardist, songwriter Phil Lanzon from Uriah Heep, 76, songwriter, singer Chaka Khan, who's 73, actor Amanda Plummer is 69, actor Catherine Keener is 67, actor Hope Davis is 62, actor Richard Grieco is 61, actor Maren Hinkle is 60, actor filmmaker Randall Park is 52, actor Michelle Monaghan is 50, actor Kerry Russell is 50, actor Nicole Tom is 48, TV chef personality Aisha Curry is 37, and Royal Princess Eugenie of Britain is 36. You have been listening to a reading of the USA Today for March 23rd, 2026. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been Val.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 6 of Buckeye by Patrick Ryan. Following that at 3 o'clock is Smithsonian Magazine, and at 4 o'clock is a re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us for these readings and more. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We broadcast daily readings of printed matter to those who are blind or have a print disability throughout Buffalo, Western New York, and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula. Almost 40 years and more than 300,000 hours of radio readings to those without sight. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service broadcast studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga. Please let others know about your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.